F1 on BBC Radio 5 Sports Extra.
The second practice session for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix is in Italy, and it's about to get underway on a dry and sunny day in Imola. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ben Edwards, a commentator on F1 on and off for nearly 30 years now, and joining me is former racer F1 expert Alice Powell, along with BBC Sports F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. As we saw a good performance from Ferrari and Mercedes earlier on in the first practice session. But Red Bull seemed to be struggling a little bit. We didn't see the normal sort of form we saw out of them. Is that going to change in FP2, do we think?
Well, Max particularly wasn't happy, was he? He was coming on the radio. Some colourful choice of words were being voiced to his engineers back in the garage at Red Bull. He made a trip across the gravel, not once, but twice. Really struggling with the car in that Sector 2. Seemed fairly comfortable in the first and last sector. But Sector 2, he just couldn't string it together and wasn't very happy. Perez, no real comment from him. He was just in front of Max Verstappen. They were fourth and fifth. But as you said, Ferrari, they were top of the times with Charles Leclerc. George Russell was just over a tenth behind him in second. Both teams bringing upgrades, but so a Red Bull, in fact. So a lot of upgrades showing this weekend. But so far, it's Ferrari and Mercedes. Will we see a difference in this one? Well, Red Bull, they always seem to find the time from somewhere. So I'll be very stupid to be writing them off now.
Well, we shall see. Andrew, this afternoon we're going to be seeing Kevin Magnussen out for the first time, because actually they had their reserve driver, Oliver Behrman, in the car earlier on today. He's had a bit of an up and down day as well in Formula 2, because he's been fast, but he's just had his time deleted in qualifying. But Kevin has got to be a little bit cautious, hasn't he, over not just the next few races, but a lot of races, because he's got a lot of penalty points after what happened in Miami.
That's right, Ben. So in Formula 1, there's a rule that if you amass 12 penalty points as a driver for driving offences in any 12-month period, you get a race ban. It was introduced in 2013, that rule, and so far no driver has actually had a race ban as a result of it. But Magnussen, over the course of the last 6 races since the start of this year, he's amassed 10 points, mainly in 2 different races, one in Saudi Arabia and one, as you say, in Miami, where both were very similar. He was holding other rivals back to the advantage of his teammate Nico Hülkenberg, but went over the limit basically in doing so, cutting corners to keep his position, all that kind of thing.
So he was actually subject, sorry to butt in there, Ben, he was subject to 7 different steward decisions in Miami.
That's right, and in the sprint race, which is just 19 laps long, he got a total of 35 seconds worth of time penalties. Anyway, that means he's now on 10 points. So if he gets 2 more points at any race for the rest of this season, he's going to get banned, and for one race. And I think it's, given the way Kevin Magnussen drives, even before he started doing all this team tactics stuff, he's always been a robust racing driver. As Jolyon Palmer was saying on our podcast yesterday, he's never seen Kevin back out of a 50-50 situation. It's hard to imagine Magnussen not getting 2 more penalty points over the remaining 18 races of the year. So yes, he's got a problem on his hands, yes.
It is going to be a bit of a challenge. He's actually always gone well here, funnily enough. He's had the best results Haas have ever had at this Imola circuit in the past. He finished in 9th place in 2022. And actually for the sprint race, because we had a very tricky sprint qualifying in damp conditions and lots of red flags and stuff, he actually qualified 4th. So he's got some good history. Although Kevin didn't go out earlier, Alice, I think he's looking forward to actually getting out on the track here at Imola again.
Of course, he's a professional driver. They would have done a lot of time in the simulator back at base in Banbury, so he'll happily slot back into his Haas. Still don't really know what went on with Nico Hülkenberg. He was quite away. Well, he was plumb last, wasn't he? But 4 seconds off the pace, so maybe an issue at his side of the garage. But Ollie Behrman was up there in the top. I think he was 12th, wasn't he? 1.6 seconds off. So at least Kev knows that the car can circulate at a decent pace, but he'll slot in quite nicely back into his seat for FP2.
Excellent. Well, let's see how it all goes. There are a lot of flags flying around in the grandstands. Lots of Ferrari colours, of course, because we are in Italy. 20 miles southeast of Bologna. It's a renowned area here for winemaking and gastronomy. Food is a lovely part of this part of Italy, there's no doubt about it. And I think we shall see a lot of reaction from the fans after Charles Leclerc was fastest earlier to see whether Ferrari can be just as quick in this second practice session. Of course, it is still practice. We're not into a sprint race weekend, so it's much more of a build-up of the pattern than we've seen for the last couple of races. Yeah,
it feels weird to be sat here talking about free practice too. It seems such a long time ago that we've had one of these. We get another practice session, of course, tomorrow morning, a free practice 3, or tomorrow afternoon, should I say. So, yes, it's if you didn't quite get the car sorted, like Max Verstappen, for example, in the first practice session, this is another chance for you, another hour for the teams to get it sorted for that. And if it still doesn't go to plan, you've got free practice 3 tomorrow morning. But certainly the atmosphere was fantastic here in Imola. The crowd certainly enjoying seeing a Ferrari at the top of the timesheets. There's several cars now heading out on track, but few opting to take part in a practice start. That includes Lewis Hamilton in his Mercedes, who was 7th fastest, should I say, in free practice 1, 4/10 of a second off the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc in first place. But he also had a few moments on track, didn't he, Ben?
He did, yeah. Lewis Hamilton had several moments. He managed to avoid damaging the car, but he had a big spin at one point, completely flat-spotted his tyres. The sound you've got at the moment is the Ferrari power unit in the back of Carlos Sainz's machine. The winner this year, like Lando Norris, the two drivers that have beaten Max Verstappen for various reasons, but both winners this year, of course. Carlos Sainz for Ferrari, Lando Norris for McLaren. Charles Leclerc yet to take a win this year, and he's never had a podium here at Imola. He nearly did a couple of years ago, but he was pushing hard to try and get past Perez, and he actually lost it at the final chicane, the Variante Alta. We've seen a few incidents up there today as well. It's something we're going to be watching for. We were talking about it earlier, Alice, but these extra gravel traps that have now been brought into the edge of various corners, they are causing a little bit of concern, aren't they?
They are. So, for example, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, they both went off at Acqua Minerale. That's down at turn 12. Just at the end of the second sector of the circuit, they both made trips through the gravel there and wouldn't really have been massively affected if that gravel trap wasn't there. Where Charles Leclerc spun off a couple of years ago, nearly said last year, a couple of years ago, Variante Alta, the chicane there had giant yellow curbs on the inside of each corner. There's a gravel trap there now, so Charles Leclerc probably wouldn't have got out of the gravel trap and participated in the remainder of the race back a couple of years ago. And we've also got one through that turn, the very high-speed turn 9, the left-hander at the top of the hill in the middle of sector 2 as well.
So yes, it's a just over 3 miles long, 4.9 kilometres, 19 turns, and it is an anti-clockwise track with that 30-metre elevation change as well. It's stayed in the same form the last few years. It was the layout was altered mostly after 1994, and of course there's a lot of memory this year being the 30-year anniversary since we lost both Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna at this event in 1994. And you'll also see, if you get a chance, to have a spot of Pierre Gasly wearing an Ayrton Senna style crash helmet this weekend. But it is a track that requires accuracy, and you've got to be very, very precise in a lot of areas. You use the curbs, but not too much, otherwise it throws the car off. We're listening to the motor on Charles Leclerc's car at the moment. He was fastest earlier on today, and he's immediately getting onto pretty good pace. Just going through a corner where he did get it wrong a couple of years ago in the race. Did recover to finish in 6th place, but it was a frustration for him because he lost out on a podium that day. Yeah,
it was huge frustration, of course. He'll be putting that way behind him. He won't have likely even thought about that today, but making the most of running right up to the gravel at the end of the lap there. It's turns 17, 18, Ravazza, and we saw a couple of drivers went through the gravel. Both of the RBs went through the gravel there. Daniel Ricciardo a bit further, a bit deeper into the gravel than his teammate Yuki Tsunoda. Lando Norris, even more Flovis paint now on the left-hand side of his car. He had quite a bit of it on his right-hand side of the car earlier on. Then it moved to the left-hand side, and it appears to be on the left-hand side again. So McLaren continuing to take measurements from this morning, and already Max Verstappen seems a little bit more comfortable on that medium tyre as he pops to the top of the timesheets.
Yeah, he has gone fastest, Max Verstappen. We're just seeing Nico Hülkenberg in the pits.
Nico will box end of this lap.
Nico feels like something's not right.
Yeah, I agree. It's not right. So we're going to have to look at it.
So it's not going well for Nico Hülkenberg at the moment. Still trying to get the feel of the track, and the car's not working quite right. But yes, Verstappen fastest by a tiny amount, by 0.05 of a second so far from Lando Norris. Second fastest in the McLaren, then the two Ferraris, and Leclerc very, very close. So the top three very tight at the moment. Sainz then fourth, Perez currently fifth, and once again Yuki Tsunoda's up there. He was quick in the first session earlier today. He was sixth quickest by the end of the session, and right now he's quicker than Hamilton and Gasly, but there is a bit of a mixture in tyre use. Top six down to Tsunoda, all been on medium tyres. Hamilton the first on hard tyres, he's seventh ahead of Gasly in eighth. George Russell, the other Mercedes, he's also on hard tyres in ninth, and Valtteri Bottas at the moment in 10th place. On track right now, about to pick up the speed again, Oscar Piastri, a youngster who is certainly a key part of McLaren. A little bit unfortunate with that incident he had with Carlos Sainz in Miami last time out, but let's see how he gets on. He's learning this Imola track. It's something new to him, but the McLaren's been working well here so far.
Yeah, it has. They both sat pretty in the top 10 in free practice one, separated by just 0.2 of a second between each other. Lando Norris pipping Oscar for 8th place, and Oscar in 9th. But he's out on the hard tyre at the moment, Oscar, and that is the C3 tyre. So Pirelli have brought along this weekend the softest, effectively, range of tyres, C3 being the hard, medium C4 and C5 the soft tyre. Everyone out there at the moment is deciding to go for medium or hard, so no one's opting just yet to go on the soft tyre.
We know that this weekend that Pirelli have brought along the softest set of tyres for this weekend. One thing here, Andrew, is that it's very typical about Imola is that actually the pit lane is one of the longest pit lanes that we go to in Formula One. So the pit stop that we will see in the race is actually one of the longest. So to try and go from a one-stop race to a two-stop race, you kind of need to see the right difference between tyres, which is something the teams will be learning today and tomorrow morning.
That's right. So the long pit lane means that it's more penalising to stop. So that leans the teams away from making more stops. So that'll be, we're seeing Pierre Gasly spinning at Variante Autobahn.
Yeah, he's had a spin onto the grass, just put a wheel over the edge on exit, and it's thrung him round, but actually, yeah, okay, not too bad. He's managed to get it going again, hasn't hit anything, and they can withdraw the yellows. Let's listen to Max.
How was the balance, Max?
Yeah, better already with this tyre, I think.
He's on the medium compound. He seems to be happy with that. That's what we're talking about, his tyres.
And he's fastest as well, so he'll be happy about that too, although it is very, very close, as you say, Ben. Less than 1/10 of a second between the top three drivers, Verstappen, Leclerc and Norris. But back to the tyres, and so Pirelli have chosen the softest three tyre compounds, as Alice was saying. I think that will be trying to push teams towards a two-stop strategy, because Imola is not an easy place to overtake since they made those changes in 1995 by adding the two chicanes at Tamburello and Villeneuve, which were the two corners where Senna and Ratzenberger were killed. So obviously, if a one-stop race with no overtaking is not a great spectacle. But as you say, with the long pit lane time, the teams are still going to be trying to do a one-stop. So we should look for that, and we won't have the data on that until after this session. But they always try to do a one-stop if they can. Really, it's only when they absolutely can't do it on wear or degradation that they get forced into a two.
Or if there's a safety car at a crucial moment, and that can often make the difference, can't it, to doing another stop?
Yeah, exactly. That's where that mixes the races up a lot, because what we've seen over and over again with safety cars is if you try and stick with an old set of tyres, you're always going to get overtaken.
Well, interestingly, Yuki Tsunoda has now gone fastest. I mean, he's doing a great job at the moment. This is with RB Team. We mentioned earlier that the Japanese driver actually lives down the road from this track. So he goes home each night. It's the only track, the only race, the Grand Prix that he does where he can go home each night, have his own food, and then come back in the morning. And he's going really well at the moment. He's just set the pace.
Yeah, maybe it's the sleeping in your own bed that's making the difference for Yuki Tsunoda. But how long for? That is, well, in the balance at the moment. Max Verstappen has just gone fastest in the first sector, and he goes through turn 12, and the car seemed a little bit better compared to what it was earlier on. It was really bouncing. A lot of people were complaining, a lot of drivers were complaining about the bouncing down the straight. This is a bumpy circuit. As you can hear, Max Verstappen's car skipping along the ground. He avoids an Aston Martin. It pulls safely out the way, just dips a wheel in the gravel at turn 18. Not fastest in the middle sector, but he's not fastest in the last sector. However, he has managed to jump just over a tenth and a half clear of Yuki Tsunoda.
It's almost, Ben, isn't it, like quite a few of the teams had their cars set too low in terms of ride height in the first session. Lots of them were complaining, the drivers, about banging onto the track, and they've obviously, I think they've had a reset. Meanwhile, it seems that there's some kind of problem going on at Williams. Both cars are in the garage. We've not heard from the team yet as to why that is, but if you remember, Alex Albon stopped in the middle of the first session, and what Williams said at the time was that the car cut out when it went over a curb, so it does rather look like they found some kind of inherent problem in both cars potentially there.
Yeah, so as you say, no time for either driver so far. Lando Norris just doing a slightly odd line there. Don't quite know what he was up to.
No, that was really bizarre. I think he thought about letting the Red Bull pass, and then quickly realised that the Red Bull was actually on a cool-down lap as well, and wanted to sort of stay on the cleaner part of the track. Charles Leclerc now has just popped up half a tenth clear of Max Verstappen. But just going back to what Andrew was saying about the Williams, there's a lot of sort of electronics that can sit underneath the driver, under their bum, and when you ride the curbs, sometimes you can often see, or you often get, is the car sort of cutting out over curbs, and I think that's what it appeared to happen to Alex Albon. As Fernando Alonso, I don't think he's particularly happy with Lewis Hamilton. Let's have a little look. Riding on board with Alonso now.
Hamilton thinks that he's alone on the track.
Yeah, copy, yeah.
The second lap he does it, turn 12 and now turn 7.
Yeah, copy.
These two, they have history, of course. Alonso and Hamilton going back all the way to when Lewis Hamilton became a Formula One driver, and they were teammates at McLaren, and they fought hard from the beginning, and they can still fight hard now.
There's no love lost there, is there, between Fernando and Alonso and Lewis Hamilton. They both have the highest of regard for each other's ability, but I don't think they have the highest of regard for each other's personalities, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Just on Williams, by the way, Ben, I noticed that about 20 minutes or so ago, they put out a tweet that said that on Albon's car they had an issue with the module. I'm assuming that means the electronics module, and it'll be replaced, and they'll run our scheduled plan for FP2, but they're clearly not running their scheduled plan for FP2 because they're both in the garage. So we're still waiting for an update from Williams, who aren't always the quickest when it comes to communications on when things go wrong with their cars.
They're having a tough time, actually, aren't they? I mean, we know that they have brought some updates on the car to lighten the car slightly, certainly on Alex's car anyway, because they've admitted just this last couple of days that the cars are a little heavy, they're a little bit overweight, so they're starting a process of lightening them up, although they said it's going to take about 6 Grand Prix events until they get to the weight limit. But there's something else definitely going on today. Yeah,
it's not been smooth sailing, has it, really, for Williams? A lot of crash damage, which resulted, of course, in Australia, Sargent having to sacrifice his seat for Alex Albon. But we were saying earlier, weren't we, that half a second they think they're losing roughly by being too heavy. And to put that into perspective, 10 kilos is worth around 0.3 of a second in Formula One. So being overweight is not ideal. The Alpine was overweight. They've been trying to trim down weight, and it seems at the moment to be helping their performance. but Williams would have liked to have had a smoother start to the weekend, so they'll be hoping to get both cars on track. They are at the moment the only 2 cars that are yet to set a lap time in this session.
Okay, yeah, fair point. Now we've got Ferrari 1 and 2 with only 0.003 of a second between Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. Daniel Ricciardo's on a quick lap at the moment, although his first sector wasn't particularly better than his previous best lap. He's currently 10th. This should move him up a little bit. Let's just have a look. No, stays 10th. It's a better lap, but he stays in 10th place, some way behind his teammate Yuki Tsunoda. There's a gap of nearly 0.8 of a second between them at the moment. And we shall have to wait and see how this pans out.
It's worth bearing in mind, Ben, as well, mentioning that Ricciardo has been under pressure because of his performances this season. You know, he was brought back, if you remember, midway through last season after AlphaTauri, as they were called at the time. They've changed their name over the winter to RB. Sacked Nick de Vries after just half a season. The expectation, here's Leclerc's radio.
And you can check the power steering.
Copy, we will check.
Copy.
In
2011, this lap was significant.
Yeah, so Leclerc's obviously got some kind of issue with his power steering, and it looks like it was happening into Acque Minerali, which is really not where you want it. It's one of the most difficult corners on the track. So Ricciardo was under pressure because he was expected to outperform Yuki Tsunoda. Hasn't been, basically. He took a bit of pressure off himself with a good qualifying performance in the sprint races in both China and Miami. But in the Grand Prix on both those weekends, he was also back behind Tsunoda again. The issue being that Red Bull don't really rate Tsunoda that highly. He's there at the behest of Honda. They don't see him as a potential graduate into their main team, and that's really what RB is all about. It's about providing graduates potentially for the main team. And so if Ricciardo can't beat Tsunoda, who they don't really rate that highly, he's under threat for that seat. And the reserve driver there is Liam Lawson, a New Zealander who did do very well when he came in when Ricciardo broke his hand only a couple of races after being drafted in last year. And Ricciardo's under serious threat of being replaced by Lawson at some point this season, perhaps not too far into the future if he can't up his game a bit. Interesting,
yeah, and right now he's not delivering. Tsunoda's loving this place. As I say, it's local to him. It's also local to the team based in Faenza, only 10 miles away, as well as having a base in the UK, and it is building up more in the Milton Keynes area as well. But they have that Italian background. It was an Italian team originally, and Tsunoda's delivering well, but Ricciardo down in what is now 11th place. We just saw Piastri go 9th fastest. Nice to see Carlos Sainz Sr. here this weekend as well, the former double World Rally champion, seeing how son's getting on. A winner already this year, Carlos, but it came at a difficult time when he suffered that appendicitis, had to miss a race altogether. But Ferrari are looking in pretty good shape, although it's very, very, very close between them and Max Verstappen, top 3 at this stage. We have run through just around 18 minutes of this second practice session so far, and we may well see some softer tyres coming out shortly on track. Let's just take a look at Oscar Piastri, Alice. Let's see what he's been up to here.
Yeah, so he's heading down into, looks like turn 14 and 15, riding over those curbs, and Pierre Gasly actually missed. That looks like that could have been all 4 wheels off there, Ben. Yeah. Pierre Gasly actually missed those, best way I can describe them really is big yellow sausage curves. I think that's the best way of describing them. Not nice to take them. If you get it wrong, it pays consequences. We've seen drivers in junior categories float straight on into the gravel, but you have to take the curbs. It is the fastest way through that corner, and Gasly missed it and got all out of shape. It just really delays you getting onto the throttle, and then you're not in the right angle on the exit of the corner. And of course he then had that spin, just hitting the exit curb at slightly wrong angle. So even though it's not a comfortable ride, the drivers unfortunately have to put up with it, because it is the fastest way through the corner. We've got a very quiet track. All cars currently in the pits.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, everyone doing a bit of build-up work. We were watching Kevin Magnussen sitting in his Haas. We've got Yuki Tsunoda, who's only 2/10 off the lead. He's in 4th place at the moment. And that little respect to Roland Ratzenberger, little picture of a crash helmet on the side of the car. which is rather lovely from the team. And he is certainly dominating the track over Daniel Ricciardo. There's only one tiny area between turns 10 and 13. That's on the way down to Acqua Minerale, where Ricciardo is any quicker than Tsunoda. It is an 8/10 gap between the two of them, both on the medium tyre. So Daniel, who, you know, he's gone well here in the past at Imola, so he's got to find some pace. And just as Andrew was saying, it's a very important time in the season. Otherwise, the team may well decide to say, well, he's not doing enough, and we're just going to have to change over, which would be very disappointing. He's had one podium here in the past. That was back in 2020. He qualified 5th, finished in 3rd place. That year he was 6th in 2021. He did have that incident with Carlos Sainz in 2022 on the first lap, and that rather ruined the race for both him and Carlos.
Yeah, I'm always a big believer in trying to push young drivers. So as much as I really do like Daniel Ricciardo, I'm a big fan. I wouldn't mind seeing Liam Lawson take his seat in F1. I thought he did a great job stepping in after Nick de Vries was ousted out last year. Really impressed. He had mixed results, was an F2 winner, but mixed results in Formula 2, didn't take the championship, but still did a great job. And you know, we've got many young drivers coming up through the ranks. We've got Liam Lawson, already mentioned, Oliver Behrman, who did a great job in free practice. Antonelli, someone coming out, Felipe Drogovic as well, is waiting in the wings patiently down at Aston Martin. So that you know, the future is bright for young talent. But of course, the issue is there's only 20 seats in Formula 1, and it's not often that drivers stay for a year or two and depart. They're often there for quite a long time. So it's difficult for these young drivers to get a seat, and when they do get the opportunity to go out testing, get these free practice sessions, they know they've really got to shine, as George Russell now heads out onto the garage, and for now he'll have the entire track to himself.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying there about trying to get the young drivers in. Andrew, I had a chat with Italian driver Emanuele Pirro, whose F1 career didn't go particularly well, but he was brilliant at Le Mans, and he knows this track very well. But what he was saying to me is that he thought it would be an idea if the Constructors' Championship only depended on one car, not both, because at the moment the Constructors' Championship is key to the money you make as a constructor. You need two drivers who are reliable, solid, because they both score. If you were only going to get one car to score, the better finishing of the two cars gets the constructor points, maybe he thought the team would risk then bringing in a youngster for the second car, because they wouldn't have to worry about the points being scored so much, and it might be a little bit more risky, but going forwards you might end up with somebody who's going to be even better. I mean,
I hear what he's saying, and it's not a bad idea. I don't see a reluctance from people. I hear a lot of people saying, oh, Formula 1 teams don't take risks with young drivers. I don't see a reluctance for Formula 1 teams to take risks with young drivers. I see a reluctance for them to take risks with any young driver. What they're looking for is someone who stands out. If you're really quick and young, you'll get a job. Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell, Piastri, Norris all came in really young. You know, Verstappen was 17. Yeah. You know, and now we've
not allowed to now, are you?
Exactly. In fact, Antonelli's 17 in Formula 2 at the moment, and he actually can't get a super license because of a rule change that came in because of Verstappen, which seems a bit stupid given that Verstappen was perfectly good enough to come in. And it was a bit like when Kimi Raikkonen came in after going straight from Formula Renault to Formula 1. Max Mosley, the FIA president at the time, was saying, oh, well, this is ridiculous. Of course he shouldn't be going straight to Formula 1, but Raikkonen came and took to it like a duck to water. So they will take risks on the right driver, but not just any driver. And we're already hearing Mercedes talking about taking potentially Antonelli for next season after just one season of F2 when he reaches 18. But they don't. And people are looking at people like Hamilton and Alonso, and Alonso's in his early 40s now. He's going to be 45 by the end of the new contract he's just signed with Aston Martin. Hamilton is going to be 40 before he starts his career at Ferrari next year. The point is, though, that these are like all-time great drivers who are still performing at a really exceptional level. Why should they be replaced by a younger driver just because they're 40? I think that's the point. So I'm not sure I see this reluctance that people think they see just because Hamilton and Alonso are old and carrying on.
Okay, that's an interesting point. We're watching Russell on track at the moment. He's doing some pretty good sector times. They're not quite the fastest of all, but I think he's going to be up near the front.
Yeah, he's on the softest compound available. So he's the first one to venture out on the soft tyre. So comes out of the final corner. He'll head down to start-finish line. DRS will open up and crosses the line, goes fourth, 10th and a half off the pace. But I just want to very quickly, I know we're talking about young drivers for a while. The issue that I have is sometimes those drivers that deserve the seats don't get the opportunity, because you've got Lance Stroll, for example, taking up a seat. Sargent, where did he finish? 5th in Formula 2. Unfortunately, it comes down to money. Guan Yu Zhou, has had some great results, but again, is bringing a lot of money with him. So he didn't win the Formula 2 championship. You know, you've got drivers that probably deserve it more than them.
It's a very valid point. And, you know, while no one would suggest that Leclerc, Verstappen, Russell, Hamilton, Alonso should lose their seats for young drivers, I think you could definitely make a case for the more average drivers, the Sargent particularly. He is going to be out by the end of the year. Zhou Guanyu is in because he paid $30 million for his seat. You know, Sergio Perez, you could even question. Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly, you know, Kevin Magnussen. These are all drivers that you could say, okay, you've had a decent shot now. You're not going to be at the top winning races. Now it's time to move on and bring someone else in and have a chance.
Well, we shall see what happens. It's always fascinating to see how the driver lineups change year by year, but we're watching Lando Norris right now, listening into him, and he's doing a very rapid lap. He's set fastest first, fastest second sector. We're into the final sector. He's keeping it clean so far, just out of the gravel. Oh no, I said that too early. He put a wheel in the gravel. Oh, and he's backed out right out of it. He put a wheel in the final gravel trap when I thought he'd got away with it all, and he's decided to bail out.
Great example of commentators' curse there. Demonstration by Ben. But yeah, dives into the pits, but that was going to be a fantastic lap from Lando Norris. I was just thinking that car looks very good over those aggressive curbs at the chicane, and he was just a little bit too greedy, I think, there with the throttle. Didn't look like he had any sort of understeer, the car, and we are just actually seeing a replay of the McLaren go over the curbs, and it's nice. It goes over the curb quite nicely, and that certainly would have made him some time, hence why he was fastest in the first couple of sectors, but just too greedy with the throttle there at the end through the last part of Ravazza. Yeah, he didn't really get too much understeer or any oversteer. I think that was just a bit too ambitious, as Charles Leclerc now 7/10 of a second clear of his teammate. On the soft tyre is Charles. Sainz yet to set a lap time, but lots of drivers now, Andrew, going out of the pits on the soft tyre.
So what's interesting is the Sainz has just done a time on the soft tyre, but he's half a second nearly slower than Charles Leclerc. But what's also interesting is Charles Leclerc, although he's gone quickest, his first and second sector times are slower than the ones that Lando Norris did in the McLaren. So Norris would have been right up there with Leclerc's time had he managed to complete that lap. Just a little bit less greedy at Ravazza too, and I think he'd have been okay.
Well, Tsunoda's done another great job again. He's fourth fastest on the soft tyre. He's at 9,000 slower than Hamilton, but we've got Verstappen going out now, so we will get a little bit more of a clearer picture of just how quick Max can be.
Yeah, I think pretty much everyone is going out on the soft tyre, just waiting for the graphic to change. So Max Verstappen going across the line now, DRS wide open, heads down, sparks flying off the back of the Red Bull. His teammate Perez comes out of the pit lane behind him. Looks like Perez is on the soft tyre, so he'll be joining his teammate on the track, hoping to set much better lap times to improve their position from where they were earlier on. As such a wiggle from Max Verstappen on the exit of the Villeneuve chicane, turn 6. A little bit of traffic in front of him from the Alpine of Esteban Ocon, which he manages to clear, but he's just over half a tenth quicker than Charles Leclerc in the first sector, and that is purple overall.
And now he's down into the area where he was definitely struggling with the car in first practice. Looks as though it's turned in pretty neat and tidily there, and he's getting past other traffic. So he's coming up towards the second split. Not so good, though. That sector, there was a lot of traffic around. Whether that affected him, I'm not sure. They've been keeping out of his way, but it is a narrow track, and it does make life quite tricky here when all the cars are on track.
Yeah, well, I think he would have lost a little bit of time on the exit through turn 6 of the Villeneuve chicane. He did get a big wobble through there, so that would have delayed him getting on throttle into 7. The traffic was not full, like you said, Ben, wasn't really in his way too much. It wouldn't have slowed him down, but he's been struggling all throughout today in that middle sector, and only pops up into 3rd place, half a second shy of Charles Leclerc, as Oscar Piastri now exits the final corner, heads down the main straight. Let's see where this will boost him up.
Whoa.
And that is 2nd place, and he is the closest challenger at the moment to Charles Leclerc, 1/10 off the pace of the Ferrari.
That's brilliant. Yeah, great lap by Oscar Piastri. So we've got Ferrari, McLaren, Ferrari, top 3 at the moment. Verstappen 4th. And as you say, that middle zone, that central zone is still not working for Red Bull. That was where he was losing his pace. George Russell is currently on a lap right now. We're just going to watch him through the last couple of left-handers that bring you onto the start-finish straight and this long curving straight where the DRS will be available for overtaking in race trim. He goes 3rd fastest. So again, the Mercedes is showing decent pace, faster than the Red Bull. So we have Ferrari, we have a McLaren, we have Mercedes, faster than the fastest Red Bull. Sergio Perez has not done his lap on soft tyres yet. Fernando Alonso is currently out there in the Aston Martin, and he's reasonable pace. Ooh, a bit of a slide, manages to just stay out of the gravel, but I'm not sure this is going to be quite top level. He's currently 8th quickest at this point.
A lot of upgrades for the Aston Martin this weekend, along with numerous teams. He just misses the curb there, does Fernando Alonso, which means it delays his power application on the exit of 17. This is going to boost him further up, is it? No, got that wrong. He's lost a lot of time in that last sector, actually. So no improvement from Alonso in the Aston Martin. But what about Sergio Perez? Yep, just up behind Max Verstappen, only in 6th though.
Yeah, so the 2 Red Bulls are currently 5th and 6th. That's a bit of a surprise, Andrew, isn't it? I mean, I know we don't always see the full story on a Friday in free practice, but nonetheless, these times are very close, and we know that qualifying here is going to be so crucial.
That's right, because it's so difficult to overtake in the race. Now, what's interesting is that you often find that after the Red Bull have a difficult Friday, and then they do their homework on Friday night, and then they come back on Saturday and they go and set pole. But just out of interest, so Norris's lap that he didn't manage to complete, he's still fastest out of everybody in the 2nd sector, and although Verstappen is quickest in the 1st sector, Norris was only let me get this right, Norris did a 23.976 in the 1st sector, Verstappen a 23.942, so only 32 thousandths slower than Verstappen. So Norris is really up in the game here.
Yes, thanks for that Mercedes.
Joe Guan Yu just reporting that he wasn't too happy about being a little bit held up. Joe is, let's just see, he's quite a long way down the list, down in 19th place. Sergio Perez hit the curb pretty hard, but he got away with it. But the Red Bull did bounce quite hard, didn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't seem smooth, especially to the McLaren and the Ferrari over those aggressive curbs, as Carlos Sainz looks like he's on another flying lap. Sparks flying. Oh, he is just over a tenth down on his teammate. Daniel Ricciardo's just moved further up the field into 11th place, still quite far off, actually over 2/10 off his teammate. But Lewis Hamilton, he's boosted himself up into the top 3, still 3/10 shy of Charles Leclerc.
Interestingly, this race has never been won from lower than 5th on the grid. 5th on the grid is not very common either. Nelson Piquet managed that, but you do need to qualify well here, because usually overtaking, and he's gone across that curve once again, done a straight line once more through the Variante Alta. We've seen people do that several times, so it's not going to be a better lap this time from Carlos Sainz. He's still currently in 5th place.
Yeah, he looked like he was heading for that accident through most of the lap. Not an accident, but that off moment through most of that lap, didn't he, Ben? Yuki Tsunoda's gone 3rd now, so it's looking to me, you've got to be careful of fuel loads here, because quite often people might run a higher engine mode, for example, in Friday practice than another team. Red Bull often run quite low on engines on Friday. Ferrari sometimes run a bit higher. They might have 10 or 20 kilos more or less fuel. These things all make quite a big difference when the times are this close, but having said that, it does look like Ferrari and McLaren, well, we saw McLaren had made a step in Miami. It does look as if this, and you've got to also be careful because it is in Italy, so Ferrari going to want to look good on Friday anyway. But get the crowd in for tomorrow. But it does look like Ferrari have made a step with this upgrade, and it does look like it could be quite a close fight between Ferrari, McLaren and Red Bull for pole. And I have to say, Charles Leclerc's looking very comfortable out there as we're watching him in car here, Alice.
I just think that the Ferrari looks good. The Ferrari is not having too much bouncing. It's riding the curbs nicely in the chicane. Same with the McLaren. Whereas the Red Bull at the moment, it just doesn't look great. I mean, Max Verstappen didn't do anything drastically wrong when he dipped a wheel into the gravel on the exit of turn 6. He just had a bit of understeer, and it's not nice and smooth over the curves. Perez didn't ride the curves very nicely at all, but Charles Leclerc was fastest in the first practice. He's now currently fastest in the second. Track evolution has made a difference. We've had an F3 qualifying session and an F2 qualifying session, so we're already a second quicker than what we were running earlier on today. But is that Lando Norris, Ben? Back out on he's on a set of medium tyres, so he's not going for another lap on those soft tyres. He obviously feels that the pace is there, feels pretty happy, and he's opted to on a set of soft tyres, medium tyres.
That's interesting, as you say, to go into race pace already. And just as Andrew pointed out, his sector times were actually right up there. So he would be where Piastri is, or maybe even ahead. A bit of a collection of cars going on right now, which thankfully they're sorting themselves out just about. I think Lando's decided to back off completely. Pierre Gasly is at the front of that little group. I'm not quite sure what went on there. But yeah, so Norris would have been very much up at the top with Oscar Piastri, perhaps even ahead of Charles Leclerc. But Leclerc, fastest in both sessions so far, and it's likely to stay that way because most of them now will be coming into the pits, putting on the different tyres like Lando Norris and working on race pace. And it's quite interesting that McLaren have decided to do this, get on with it early, not try and just put an extra time into a fast lap. Just looking at there's a bit of help being held up here. This was George Russell following. Lando Norris trying to get past Gasly, which he couldn't do.
Yeah, I mean, that's really hindered George Russell, and already I can see him pushing the radio button. He would be complaining to the team. That's kind of ruined his soft tyre run there. Who's this? This is one of the Red Bulls. Sergio Perez is opting to go for another push lap on a set of his soft compound tyre. Feathers it through the chicane. And now he gets his teammate is in that battle there, or the traffic jam, should I call it, as well as a Mercedes who's Lewis Hamilton, that looks like. So that's Perez's lap ruined with traffic at turn 7.
My God, I don't know, man. It's so difficult, everything, man. This time, sending the front grips up a lot, I almost spin.
So Max Verstappen is not happy. He seemed fairly happy on the medium tyre. He said, didn't he, that the car feels better on this compound of tyre, but really seems to be struggling on the, as he's going to, a bit of gesticulation there between him and Lewis Hamilton. Lots of hand-waving gestures. I'll leave that to your imagination of what those might have been, but he's not happy at all. And this is not the first time that Lewis Hamilton has kind of got in the way of people during this session, is it, Ben? And Lewis actually is putting his hand up, sort of saying sorry.
Yeah, he apologised there, Lewis Hamilton, and then it messed up Sergio Perez as he came down to both of them. So it's a bit of a classic. We've often seen many incidents rivalry, of course, between Hamilton and Verstappen, and in the end it hurt Sergio Perez as well. Meanwhile, let's just mention the fact that Yuki Tsunoda has popped back up to 3rd place once again. That fantastic performance. Hamilton is on a lap on soft tyres, so we may still see a change or two, because most people have come back into the pits, but Hamilton is on a lap right now, so we'll keep an eye on this and just see whether he can move up from 4th position. Right now, Yuki Tsunoda in the RB is quicker, and his first sector is not particularly impressive.
No, not great, and he had to pass Max Verstappen. I was wondering if Max Verstappen was going to repay the incidents that of Hamilton getting in his way, but he didn't. Max did the right thing, stayed out of the way, but still not particularly happy on the soft compound of tyres. So Red Bull have got some work to do from switching performance from the medium to the soft, as Lewis Hamilton sets a personal best in that middle sector, rides the curve fairly nicely. Bit of traction loss as he gets on the throttle from turn 15, heads down now into the real tricky first regatta, and you have to get on that curve, which he does, but he just dips a wheel in the gravel as he enters turn 18, manages to keep the power down, not lose too much time, but it wasn't a personal best in the end, and no improvement from Lewis Hamilton, who will stay in 4th place, 0.4 of a second off.
Yeah, and just a fraction behind Yuki Tsunoda as well. Lewis has won here in the past. He won when Formula One came back after a long gap. The track wasn't used from 2006 right up to 2020. He won that first 2020 event, although he was out-qualified by his teammate Valtteri Bottas on that occasion, but he came through to take the win and took the fastest lap. Then he got pole the following year in 2021, but we had that wet race. He went off down at Torsa and ran wide, and that was the race that Max Verstappen won. And in fact, he was helped out a little bit by a safety car coming at a good time, or red flag, in fact, with a Bottas-Russell come together, and it did enable Lewis to come back to finish in 2nd place that time. Last year, though, he only finished 14th, so last year here, Mercedes were not very competitive. He was out-qualified by his teammate here last year, but neither of them had a fantastic time. Russell did move up in the main race and to finish in 4th place, but let's just see whether they've definitely got a more competitive car here this year by the looks of things. We'll find out a bit more when we get into real qualifying tomorrow. So race pace is now beginning to become a factor with 20 minutes to go, and Lando Norris, one of the first to start putting this together to see what sort of lap times you can do on the race tyres. He was very quick when he went out earlier, but had to back out because of putting a wheel into the gravel trap. 1 minute 20.8 he did last time around. That is going to be more the sort of race pace now.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that not more people are already out trying to work on their race pace. Just looking at our graphic, you've got Kevin Magnussen, who's just done an outlap now on the hard tyre. Oscar Piastri's out there on the hard. Yuki Tsunoda on the medium. Lando Norris, obviously, we spoke about, medium. And Daniel Ricciardo is on an outlap on the medium tyre as well. So a few more starting to pop out, but I expected, really, at this point in the session, more to be out there. As Lance Stroll, he's popped up the times. He's on the soft tyre, goes up to 13th place, just over a 10th and a half of his teammate Fernando Alonso, who's in 10th. And Nico Hulkenberg still there in the garage, but he's settled into the track fairly nicely. I couldn't believe the stat that we read that he's never raced here out of all his career, which is a long career for Nico Hulkenberg. He's not raced here.
No, it is a surprise. I remember commentating on him when he won the A1 GP championship in his very early years, and that was before he got into Formula One, but A1 GP didn't race at Emilia either over the years. Tsunoda incident, failing to follow race director's instructions, so maybe there's something for Tsunoda, who is 3rd fastest in this practice. It's unlikely it will affect anything particularly. Hopefully it won't be a grid penalty or anything like that. It would be a shame if he's got such good pace here this weekend. Tomorrow we will find out for sure. He is, as you mentioned, on the medium compound tyre now. We're seeing Lando Norris fairly consistently in the 120s at the moment, so that gives us a bit of a perspective as to what sort of lap time to look for under race pace. Still quite a few cars in the pits getting those tyres fitted at this stage. I think this order will stay pretty much the same. So what we've got at the moment is a Ferrari at the top, Leclerc fastest, from Piastri from McLaren, 3rd for RB Racing for Yuki Tsunoda. That's a real surprise. Then the two Mercedes of Hamilton and Russell. They are 4th and 5th. The 2nd Ferrari in 6th place, that's Carlos Sainz, and then the Red Bulls. So the Red Bulls are down in 7th and 8th places after this first important part of FP2. Verstappen is 7th, Perez is 8th, Hulkenberg, as you mentioned, has done a good lap, he's 9th, Alonso only 10th, so Aston Martin struggling. Daniel Ricciardo way down in 11th compared to where his teammate is. Lando Norris 12th, but that's not relevant really, because we saw the sector times he was doing and then he backed out on the last sector. Norris actually does have ultimate pace, but he's down in 12th place. 13th for Stroll, Ocon and Gasly, the two Alpines struggling as ever. Bottas in 16th place ahead of Magnussen, and then Alex Albon, Zhou Guanyu and Logan Sargent. So that is the order that is likely now to stay until the end of this session. And in that bottom group, I suppose we're seeing the ones we tend to expect: the Williams, one of the Haas, and the Saubers. The Saubers definitely struggling a little bit for pace here this time, and that's disappointing for Bottas, because Valtteri's always gone very well here. As I mentioned, he out-qualified Hamilton when they were teammates at Mercedes when they came back here in 2020. So, Bottas is going to feel a bit frustrated, I think, in being down in 16th place at this stage. Let's see if they can improve the cars. And of course, Alice, with the plans with no sprint race this weekend, tonight is a very busy time for the engineering side, both back at the bases and here. They'll be doing, they can't work all night because they have limits on when they can work at the track, but they will have people back at base doing simulation work, and they can really change the cars for tomorrow morning, can't they? Yeah, they can, and that's the big difference it makes from a sprint weekend to, say, your normal traditional race weekend. You'll have a simulator driver usually that'll be back at base, as you said, Ben, wherever that may be, running through simulations, running through different kinds of setups. These are extremely high-tech simulators, not your ones you can pop down to the local shops and purchase to race online. But they'll be busy and they'll have long, in-depth debriefs. So doesn't mean when the checker flag falls for this session that it's all done and dusted for the drivers. They'll head and do their engineering debriefs, which can last a long time. Drivers sometimes usually here to way past 10 o'clock at night, just to find those extra tenths of a second to really try and make improvements to the car. And I can imagine Max Verstappen will be one of those drivers that really isn't particularly happy on the soft tyre, so he'll be there working closely with his performance engineer, or the other engineers, data engineers that are there at the track and back at base. As Gasly, he's on the hard tyre now with his Senna tribute helmet. Doesn't make any improvements, of course. His fastest lap time, which has put him in 15th place, set on the soft tyre, 1.1 seconds off the Ferrari at the top. Here we're going to see a replay of Yuki Tsunoda's. There we go. So I just brought up the race director's notes, actually, from the practice starts. So basically, he's pulled over to the right-hand side, and this is, you can hear him do a practice start now. So in the race director's notes from this weekend, there is a practice start box at the end of the pit lane. Most tracks will have this. There won't be if you've got a track like Miami, where it's not very safe to do one at the end of the pit lane, just because of the nature of the pit exit. He's not pulled into that box. He's done one at a slight angle, completely out of the box. So that's why he is going to have to make a trip up to the stewards after the session. It won't really be a penalty, likely to be a slap on the wrists, potentially a fine as well. So there we go. That's why Yuki Tsunoda will have to spend some time, not in a debrief, but up in the clerk's office, as we're on board now with Carlos Sainz, who's on the medium tyre. Yep, Sainz now on the race pace as well, so all of them now focusing a bit more on the sort of pace that they could be doing in the races. I was mentioning that 1 minute 20s looked to be what Lando Norris is doing. He's still pretty much sticking to that, and actually it's looking good, because we'll see what the Ferraris are doing now. 121s was the last lap that he did. Yeah, 121.0 again. So actually, I have to say, as far as I can see, Lando Norris's race pace is currently a little bit quicker than Carlos, but yeah, they're both, I think, on the medium, so that's quite interesting. Of course, this will all be absorbed by the teams, and then, as we mentioned, there could be adjustments to the cars for tomorrow. We're watching Oscar Piastri. Something I wanted to ask you, Alice, the chicanes at this track. I mean, you've raced W Series supporting quite a few Grand Prix over the years, not at this track, but there are certain tracks where chicanes are a key part of. Do you think these chicanes here are slightly unique in a way? Do you think that they're very different to chicanes elsewhere?
I think so. And also the curbs play quite a big part. They're quite strange curbs at this track. They're not your sort of traditional curbs you'd usually see. Let me try and think, comparing to your Miami. We've recently been to Silverstone for those that are more sort of local in the UK. They don't really have a curb effect. They don't look like curbs. They just look like sort of moulds, really, especially at this middle chicane, which Oscar Piastri is filtering through now. You almost got three parts. It's almost three smooth steps to the curb, and the yellow large part of the curb is quite aggressive. And if you just kiss the curb ever so slightly wrong through the very fast burst, the Varante Tamburello curb, corner, shall I say, in the first sector. We've seen Oliver Behrman, for example, got it wrong in Formula 2 practice, sent him into the barriers. We've had Villeneuve chicane. Again, Max Verstappen got it ever so slightly wrong, just kissing the curb a little bit too much, and getting it then resulting in a bit of understeer on the exit of turn 6, which sent him slightly into the gravel. So Oscar Piastri, watching him, he's out there on the hard tyre. He's opting to stay away from those curbs, especially at the Villeneuve chicane, because if you do get them slightly wrong, then it can pay quite large consequences, especially down at turn 14 and 15, where Charles Leclerc got it wrong, went and spun off just to manage to avoid the barriers. There was no gravel there, though, at the time, so he was able to easily drive out. There is a massive gravel trap there now, so they're not the ripple effect curbs that you see. They're kind of, I guess, just a hump. I don't know if that's the right way to a step up. They are strange curbs.
Yeah, and as you say, the accuracy, you've got to deal with it every lap. Is you can get it absolutely right, but you can easily get it wrong, which is part of the fun of this weekend and what we'll be watching throughout the course of both qualifying and the race on Saturday and Sunday. So we've got Zhou Guanyu out on track at the moment on the Sauber. All of them trying to do some decent race pace. Lando Norris in the 120s, Piastri I noticed in the 120s, but Leclerc has just done a slower lap, but he had done a very quick 1 minute 20 as well. So it looks as though they're all on a pretty good mix. Still 10 minutes to go in this session. Still plenty of learning to do about the handling of the cars. Zhou Guanyu down in 19th place at the moment, but now focusing very much on how the car is going to react in the race pace. And of course, it's not been a particularly good year for Zhou just yet. He's been out-qualified every time so far this year by Valtteri Bottas, in fact. And so far, he hasn't managed to score any points. So he really needs to try and put something together in these European races that we're now into. We've got a batch, of course, Monaco coming up next week. But it's not proving too easy at this point. Andreas Seidel, the key leader of the team. He was at McLaren, now part of Sauber, but it will become Audi, of course, in a couple of years. Yeah, it will. Audi making moves into Formula One. How much of the team personnel will really change? Charles Leclerc now being held up quite considerably by one of the Red Bulls. I'm unsure who that is. I'm just trying to see. I think it might be Perez. Yeah, so Charles Leclerc almost runs him off the track as a way to say, excuse me, get out of my way. You can see Perez is checking his mirrors, but it's almost like he didn't really want the Ferrari to go past, wanted some clear space.
What's wrong with Ferrari?
They're both...
Don't do his thing, we'll do our thing.
Exactly. They're both complaining about each other, but you've got to do your own thing and get on with it. It is a track that's narrow, it's tight, and things like this can easily happen, and you've got to be a bit wary. And we've also seen in the past history here incidents between two teammates within the same teams where they've come together, or relationship has come apart because of disappointment. It was a famous one here between Didier Pironi and Gilles Villeneuve, where they were just dicing with each other with an easy 1-2 victory on their hands, and Gilles thought it was all sorted because he was in the lead, and Didier Pironi dived past him just towards the end of the race, and there wasn't any way for him to get back past, and it caused huge resentment, and very sadly it also effectively led to the anger and the and the fatality, an accident that he had at the following race. Whether you can say it was because of that, but he was furious about what had happened here at Imola. So incidents between teammates is certainly something that's happened here in the past. Let's hope that we don't get something like that happening this weekend, Alice. It wouldn't be something we want to see.
No, certainly wouldn't. We want of course, a competitive race, a fight all the way down the order, whether it's for first all the way down to 20th place, but we want it to be clean, we want it to be fair. And talking further down the order, Albon is down in 18th. These Williams cars have been able to go out and do some laps. 1.2 seconds off for Alex Albon, Sargent 1.9 off, so a good chunk of time off his teammates. He's sitting plumb last is Sargent, who Andrew has spoken about already, said his time is potentially going to be up very soon. He's out on the hard tyre at the moment. Alex Albon is putting some laps in on the medium tyre, so both cars opting to go a different set of compounds, I'm guessing just to gather different sets of data. And Max Verstappen is out on the medium tyre, the tyre that he said felt much better on compared to earlier on today, but he is not a happy bunny, in particular on the soft tyre, as floats through 14, 15, the chicane, Barante, outer. Now he'll head further down, goes downhill into turn 17, just making sure he gets the curb, but too much there, Ben, and sails through the gravel.
Yeah, he just ran it wide there. Even though he's on race pace now rather than sort of qualifying pace, and he just let it run out wide. So he's got to clean the tyres up effectively and then build it back up again. His last flying lap wasn't particularly quick. It was a 1:21. Meanwhile, his teammate has done a quick lap, a 1:20.3, which is a decent race pace.
So those of regular listeners will know that Andrew Benson loves his stats, and a guy that sits at home deep into the night in front of his computer looking at race runs, tyre runs. I mean, he should really be an engineer, not a journalist, but it's time for this.
Long Run Corner with Andrew Benson.
And we can go the distance, we'll find out in the long run. In the long run.
I did actually do a bit of engineering once, Alice. I did a Tyrrell test back in 1996 with Mika Salo and Mike Gascoigne.
I knew it.
Anyway, so look, there's some really interesting race run. Verstappen I can't give you any data on because he's obviously having a very difficult day. He's off the pace and we've just seen him run wide at Ravazza. But the quickest person on the medium tyre is actually Sergio Perez, which does suggest that Red Bull, once they get Verstappen's car sorted out, will be okay. But Charles Leclerc is fractions behind him in the Ferrari. He's done a very consistent race run, and Lando Norris a little bit off the pace of Leclerc, a couple of tenths or so, but still in the game. On the hard tyre, Oscar Piastri is looking very quick. In the other McLaren, definitely a lot quicker than the two Mercedes. So if the worry is, from the competitive point of view, is if Perez is the quickest guy on the race tyres, put Verstappen in a car that's properly balanced, he'll be ahead, and Red Bull will walk it like they walk most races this year. But Ferrari look close enough and McLaren look close enough to maybe make a fight of it. So these race runs, the reason we talk about them is it gives you a much clearer competitive picture than the soft tyre runs earlier in the session, because you can't really disguise it. You know, you might run a different engine mode, but if you're doing a race simulation, you'll start with the fuel that you start the race with. So it takes out some of the variables.
Okay, well, it's interesting though, and it certainly does look as though it could be very, very tight in terms of race pace. And as we've known before, it will make qualifying absolutely crucial here tomorrow to make sure you're up on the first couple of rows, really, because if you're not, it's going to be very difficult. Not impossible, because we might get an exception. We might suddenly get a safety car because of all these gravel traps. Who knows? But it is important to qualify well. So we're just having a look at what Alex Albon, and he's got a lot of the aero paint all over the car as well, hasn't he?
I don't think I've ever seen a Formula One car's halo subject to as much Flovis paint as Alex Albon's is at the moment. It's so much so that it's all flown off and actually onto the top of his helmet. So luckily he's got some tear-offs there that Andrew was talking about earlier. They're thin strips on the driver's helmet, and you usually have anywhere between sort of 7 to 10 tear-offs. You can tear it off and let it go out the side of the car, hopefully avoiding any brake ducts, unlike Max Verstappen in the first practice session. He had to box because there was his tear off got stuck in his brake duct. But yeah, Alex Albon's helmet now has a variety of colours on it, which also includes the Flovis paint. So he's out there circulating, of course, doing some long runs, his teammate as well, and pretty much every driver on track, all bar Piastri, who's in the pits. Lando Norris is on an outlap, and not a single, single driver. There is 2 drivers, in fact, who are on the soft tyres, and one of those is Lando Norris.
Okay, that's interesting. Piastri.
Yes, so it's incredible.
He was trying to get past Esteban Ocon and felt that Ocon was not doing the right game, and that's obviously what he was putting across on the radio there. Oscar Piastri, the man who is currently second fastest after those early laps. But that's very interesting, that what you say about Lando Norris on the soft tyres now. So let's just see what there are 2 laps these tyres have already done. Is he running full fuel? Is he running lighter fuel? It's more likely to be running a reasonable amount of fuel, I would think, for them to get a little bit of an idea of what it's like. There's only a minute to go in this second practice session of the day, and we shall see how that goes. Meanwhile, we were talking about there's apparently the investigation about impeding the Perez and Leclerc little incident. So that's going to be looked into by the stewards as well. We were talking about Alex Albon, in fact, here at Imola when he was driving for Red Bull. He did qualify quite well. He qualified 6th, but he had a spin just towards the end of the race when it looked like he was going to get a 6th place finish at the Villeneuve chicane. So it is something that has happened in the past here, could well happen on race day once again on Sunday. There is a slight chance of rain on Sunday. We were looking at the forecast earlier. There is a chance of some rain coming in later on in the afternoon. So whether that's going to have an effect or not, we'll just have to monitor that as we get into Sunday. But qualifying looks like it will be dry tomorrow.
Yeah, Lando Norris, though, he's not going to move any further up the timesheets. He's basically stuck behind Zhou Guan Yu. He's been trying to get past the majority of the lap. He does so now into the second to last corner, but he has lost a lot of time compared to what he should be setting on the soft tyre. 4.8 seconds to be precise. As he crosses the line now, checkered flag is out for the end of the session, and Lando Norris is one of the first to meet it, so he won't have any chance, Ben, to better his time, better his position on the soft tyre.
No, but we do know that his sector times were brilliant earlier on, and although he's going to end up on the lineup in 12th position overall, we know that he's got an extremely competitive car. His teammates right up there as well, Oscar Piastri. Both cars have been modified the same way now, because in Miami just the car of Norris had the updates. Now Piastri has them as well, and there is no doubt the McLaren is strong. So is the Ferrari. And we really have a question in our minds, seeing where Verstappen and Perez have ended up. Perez has certainly had decent race pace, but there is going to be a little bit of a question mark as to whether Red Bull can deliver in qualifying, because that middle sector, there was no doubt it was the middle sector where they were missing out compared to Ferrari and to McLaren, and that they've got an overnight to sort that out, and they may well do. They may well come in tomorrow with major modifications, but at the moment it does look as though we've got quite a battle on our hands, and the Ferrari fans will be happy because Charles been fastest in both today.
Yeah, they'll be extremely happy. Lots of Ferrari fans here, of course. A very popular race for the outfit. Fred Vasseur looking fairly happy on the pit wall, but they'll know this is just free practice. Doing it in practice is one thing, but once you're under pressure, the pressure's on for pole position. You've got to perform in qualifying. That's, of course, when it counts. Never write off Red Bull, though. Yes, they're down the order, where we're never usually seeing them. But I think it'll be very, very silly to write them off. They, of course, have some fantastic people working back at base and on track as the cars all slowing down, all backing off now. Majority of them, I expect, will head to the grid where you're allowed to do a practice start actually in grid position. So most of the drivers, I expect. And Yuki Tsunoda, who you can hear now, very, very solid effort by him.
Yeah, what I will say though, just to go back to the race simulation runs, was he was not quick on race fuel. So I suspect there's a bit of a glory run there from the local boys at RB, as they are now, is one of their factories. They have several factories, but one of them is down the road at Faenza, only about 15 minutes away.
Okay, that's interesting. But it was still impressive what he did. So, yeah, as you say, they're going to do some practice starts. Let's just run you through the order then. Charles Leclerc, fastest in both first practice and second practice. Ferrari have topped the times in both sessions. Oscar Piastri, second fastest for McLaren. And Yuki Tsunoda in the RB, we just mentioned, third fastest. Impressive. Will he have it tomorrow? We'll find out. Then the two Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton, fourth. George Russell, fifth fastest. Carlos Sainz, sixth. Max Verstappen, only seventh. And his teammate Sergio Perez at Red Bull, 8th. Nico Hülkenberg, excellent 9th place in the Haas, but Aston Martin struggling a bit, 10th place for Fernando Alonso. Daniel Ricciardo, 11th, then Lando Norris, 12th, but with the pace we saw earlier, he's definitely potential front row or first couple of rows qualifier tomorrow. Lance Stroll, 13th. Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly showing the Alpines still not very competitive here, 14th and 15th, and the same for the Saubers. Valtteri Bottas is 16th. Kevin Magnussen, 17th in the other Haas. Alex Albon in the Williams, 18th. Zhou Guan Yu in the other Sauber in 19th place, and Logan Sargent bringing up the back of the group in the other Williams. Williams definitely having a few problems here today, some technical problems with the cars as well, which hasn't helped them too much, so they had a bit of a limited lap time on track this afternoon. Nonetheless, we've got lots to look forward to when we get into the second day tomorrow here at Imola. There'll be a third practice session, and as we mentioned, there'll be opportunities for teams to make some big changes overnight if they need to. Very different to a sprint race weekend where you're really stuck after first practice with what you've got. Here, they've got a lot of modifications on the cars, and they will try and change them, alter them, and make sure that they're going to be rapid when it comes to qualifying tomorrow afternoon. So I do hope you're going to be able to join us for what should be a very, very exciting day tomorrow. Qualifying is crucial to the whole weekend. Well, this has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. Next up, we're going back to the county cricket matches once again, and all presented by Kevin Howells.
Thank you very much. Great stuff this afternoon. More from you, of course, over the weekend as well, which we look forward to, both over on 5 Live.